Yo, some of my favorite content is when I get interviewed, but like remote interview, because then I'm like driving, let's say, and like saying cool shit. So it could make for good cinematic sequences and standalones and all this other jazz. So I'm being interviewed for Afrotech, which is a company that it's owned by Blavity, which is a company that we invested in. So I'm gonna give him a call and jump on the phone with him. So one thing, thank you.
Everyone's not gonna keep him. I'll be cruising 40,000 feet like I'm a born. Yeah, that we need no longevity. It said I'm sad to deep breath in these fundamentals. I simple to synthesis. Cause somebody said my uninterested. I'm interested. Living life is what matters. Still like a son. I can son a rapper. Every one of you rappers, I'm on those.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna swing by the drive-thru at BK.
Hello.
By the way.
Please state your name after the tone, and Google Voice will try to connect you.
JH.
All right, great. So where are you actually headed, John? You don't have to tell me if it's super private.
No worries. I'm headed back to Harlem. I was in Allentown checking up on some properties. So.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Pretty much wherever you're invested in real estate, it just kind of becomes part of your world to be there more often.
But the reason I wanted to interview you today is I'm just wondering if we can have just a kind of 50-foot conversation about kind of the state of funding for Black founders. Why it's so grim, the problem that you all are trying to solve, and really just kind of like how we got to this point. Because I think that while people know what Harlem Capital is and they know about your firm, I think that it would be good for our audience, especially as we get a little closer to the conference here. I think it would be good for our audience to hear from you directly, on the things you all are working on the mission that you all are trying to achieve, and some of the problems that you all are trying to attack. Sound good?
Sounds great, man. Appreciate that overview, and happy to take it wherever you want.
Okay, so I think that the big thing that I think that like I've always wondered, and I think that people wonder kind of when they hear about you all's company and what you all are trying to do, and I know you all have talked about it briefly before, but what exactly inspired you all to start Harlem Capital? I feel like a lot of people may not know the story of, exactly.
Yeah, no, great question. What inspired us? Look, the cool thing about working with a team is that, you end up really being like the seed of inspiration can kind of run the gamut across the whole team. And so in our case, I had been an entrepreneur, and so I kind of came up that way. Some of my partners came up through the banking ecosystem, and so for whatever reason, pretty much, we were all exposed as young kids of color coming up. We were all exposed. Either we broke our way into the system, or in their case, they kind of came up through formal pathways. But in both cases, it was the same. It was like, okay, we're starting to get glimpses into this world. We're doing the work. We're investing. My partners were investing money on behalf of their firm. So they're like, hey, we're already, doing this for other folks. Like, why don't we start putting capital to work? And by that point, I had already finished my first venture. and was already incubating companies. And so I kind of started thinking along the lines of the same thing. And so Harlem Capital really started as that. It actually was not initially a diversity focused concept. It was like, hey, let's put some let's put some bread together as young men of color and let's make some things happen. And so what happened, John, is we saw, okay, there are pretty few founders of color actually hitting our desk. Like, it was actually glaringly evident because of the majority of people we were sitting with. And then when you peel the curtains back even further, you start to realize that the reason that there is few funded founders is because there's even fewer diverse fund managers. That is, the folks that are deploying the capital overwhelmingly are, white male. And so then we took a look at the data, and what we found was pretty clear. One, there actually is not, to be fair, an abundance of data on this, because firms and stuff had been typically hesitant to collect data around like gender and race, because it could be potentially seen as discriminatory. And so for that reason, there's not a lot of data around diversity. But one HBS professor did conduct the largest study in this space, 42,000 VC-backed founders and over 14,000 VCs. And what he found was almost a 1-to-1 correlation between VC-funded founders and VCs on a gender and race basis. So to break that down, only 0.3% of investors are black, and just 0.4% of VC-funded founders are black. And then on the gender side, 89% of VCs are black, 89% of VCs are male, and like 91% of VC-funded founders are male. So in other words, there's a 1-to-1 correlation. You name it. If out of every 100 there's only like 3 Asian investors, then that shakes out to who they fund. And so pretty much, to get away from the heady stuff for a moment, the takeaway, as I saw it, is that pretty much seems to support subconscious bias. People effectively do what they know. I really don't believe, and we don't believe at the team, that this lack of funding for folks of color is like an ill-intended exclusion. It's not like people are like, hey, we're gonna keep folks out. I just believe, honestly, that people do what they know. And so historically, to answer your question earlier about how we got here, historically, capital has existed in just but a handful of networks from folks that have gone to a handful of schools. And so, it's not uncommon to then invest in folks that came up in similar networks of you, have worked at similar banks, have worked at similar jobs, have gone to similar schools. And then if you want to compound that even further, in the VC asset class, particularly the seed stage, because it's so early stage, you really have less data to go on when you make your investment decision. It's not like the company's been around 7-10 years and you can kind of point to historicals. It's more so like, all right, these companies are really young and have a limited amount of data, so folks will tend to pattern match and go with what they've seen be successful in the past.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Sorry, John. Your phone cut off right after you said these companies, and then it came back on when you started talking about pattern matching. I just want to make sure I get whatever there was in that gap over there, because I feel like it was good.
Yeah, no worries. I was pretty much saying, so people do what they know. We established that. But then when you compound that in an asset class like venture capital, where in VC there's very little data that you have to go on, right? It's not like these companies have like 10 years worth of history. Like in a lot of cases, they're upstarts. So they've been around less than a year, sometimes a year or two.
Sure.
And so because there's naturally less data to go on, it's a lot more subjective by nature. And so investment decisions is a lot more based on kind of pattern matching. Like, okay, what has been successful in the past? And so I think it's really tempting to go based on what has worked in the past, which up till now has largely been kind of white males out of Silicon Valley, And so anyway, I'm just kind of paving kind of the understanding for why we are where we are. It's largely been because capital is coming from certain networks, and then that capital is staying in those networks because it's just a lot more natural to invest in whom you've come up with And so anyway,
Sure.
To set the stage for the rest of the conversation, the way that's shaken out is pretty much only 3% of all venture funding, which, by the way, last year in 2018, there was $131 billion invested into venture as an asset class, compared to 84 in 2017. So this asset class is growing tremendously. It's shaping the companies of the future, and women and minorities, women of all races and minorities, make up 70% of the US population, and yet we're receiving just 3% of the venture funding. So anyway, that is the seat that we grew really passionate about. We felt like if we were in that seat deploying capital, we would, as young folks of color, would be a lot more in tune with the ideas of the future, a lot more sensitive to subconscious bias, certainly not impervious or immune, but just as millennials. So we have that generational edge, but we also have the racial edge. And I just feel like we can, if we're smart and we stay focused, I think we can make some really interesting bets across the next decade on the companies and the entrepreneurs of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, John, like one thing that I just keep thinking about, right, is like, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, but it's like Black people and, obviously other minorities as well, but in my view, especially Black people, are some of the main drivers of culture in tech and business, right? Like people look at our culture, people look at what we do, and they sell things based off the things we like. And
No
when
doubt.
and when I hear some of these numbers, that you're telling me, it just raises the question in my mind, like, we are the reason that a lot of these corporations are making the money that they're making.
Yep.
And it's like, why is everybody getting paid but us? You know what I mean?
No, facts, man. And I couldn't agree more. And for, like, at least in our view, there's a lot of reasons why that equity inequality exists. And for us, we view perhaps the most powerful way to combat the whole thing is to grow equity. We have to build our equity. And I was on a panel, it was a Black History Month panel this year that Hennessy was threw on. And they asked like one of those standard, like, all right, so it's the last question. It's like rapid fire. What's the one word that you stand, that you're all about? And folks had community and collaboration. And by the time the round robin got to me, all that came to mind was equity. If I could sum up everything that we're after, that I'm about, and that this mission is about, it's about equity. Because when you become a student of the game, you start looking through, okay, well, how was this wealth like so grossly distributed the way it has been? It comes down to a lack of ownership, a lack of equity in our homes and our primary residences, a lack of equity in the real estate in our communities, a lack of equity at the policy table, a lack of equity in the companies of today. And the reason that the corporate equity is so important is because we've just grown into such an industrialized and capitalistic state, which, by the way, I'm a diehard capitalist. So, I believe in capitalism as an equalizer. But at the same time, these companies have amassed so much power, so much, data, so much reach, distribution, such large balance sheets. They're largely propagating the world views of today. What's acceptable, what's not, what everyone uses. And so anyway, like, as an individual, as John Henry, like, as you can tell, I get very worked up about this, because now let's explore another case scenario really quickly. So 2019 has been the record for IPOs, that is, companies going public. And Uber, Lyft, Zoom, Beyond Meat, Levi's, Slack, WeWork, like a record number of companies have gone public and created so much wealth. right? For Wall Street, for the bankers, for the lawyers that handle the fees, for the entrepreneurs, for the early stage employees. And I'd be willing to bet that just a fraction of that made its way to communities of color. And so as a venture investor, I'm like, okay, I know, just given the amount of capital that's in the venture ecosystem now, I know there's gonna be another wave of IPOs in the future. And what can we do to ensure that the founders that bank and make, and make the cash, the early stage investors, how can I make sure that that liquidity and those monies are going, back to our communities? Because last thing I'll say on this, the general public, once a company goes public, the general public has the opportunity to buy those stocks. But it's a totally different picture when you get into WeWork at a $4 million valuation versus 40 billion when they go public, right? And so oftentimes the folks who are left to hurt is the little guy, it's a mom and pop shop, the retail investor that's buying on Robinhood or, any platform, they're buying at retail value. But by that point, the VCs that got in really early, have made literally a multi-billion-dollar fortune. So all of that value creation only is possible to get in through venture capital. And that's why this asset class in particular is incredibly important, because we are determining the companies that will dominate the future.
So I think that, one thing I'm curious about, and you obviously just
solid nuggets. Solid nuggets. Pound of dollars says, you might be that key that connects the streets to the boardroom. And I really like that. I think that's the kind of the white space that I want to find. Connecting the streets to the boardroom.
They're shooting you.
Hey, what's up?
I don't want to interrupt you.
Hey.
I got your information on Instagram.
Okay.
I'm the one who hit you up about an Airbnb hotel coming up.
Oh yeah, okay.
I talked to the developer. She knows you. She said she want to hold off and wait on you.
Okay. You're looking great too.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
You too.
Take care. So that was right on time, right? Connecting the streets to the boardroom. In order to connect two places, you had to have been in both. And by definition, a lot of people who get to the boardroom don't come from the streets. And most people who come from the streets don't really cross over to the meaningful boardrooms. And I've begun to do that. So I spend a lot of time thinking about that. How can I be the street translation from the boardroom, and reach back and see what we can make happen. Yo, appreciate you, bro. Yo, thank you, man. Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Wow. Oh yeah, we could hit that for sure. Let's say what's up to Nick, and then bring him back. I've been vlogging these streets for a minute. Only now people are kind of starting to care or notice or whatever. Before it's just that kid with the camera, and now it's like people watch what we make. Yo. What's up, dude?
How you doing, bro?
What's going on, bro?
Devante.
What's going on, bro? Nice to meet you. Yo, my boy's trying to hit the food truck over here. You guys mind?
Yeah, nice to meet you. What do you want to do?
My boy's gonna hit the food truck right here.
Yeah.
Apparently, videographers need to eat.
Dude, I would have never guessed it.
Quesadillas. That's how you know that boy's Dominican.
Hey.
He needed some form of Spanish food.
Puerto Rican, bro.
I'm Dominican.
You want it?
We're both. Yo, you didn't get me anything? Wow. I fuck with you, man.
Shit is over. The gig is up.
Yo.
Thank you, Bobby. God bless.
Awesome.
This right here, so importante to keep this in the mind days and is on the journey. Very nice. Is there any hustle merch with John Henry style? A quick Cadillac collab. My nigga talk about it. Yo, I got some people that every post that VICELAND does on their Instagram, they ask about season 2. I got some loyal motherfuckers, bro.
So you got to call in 10 minutes or so?
Maybe. We'll see.
Good to see you.
However long they take. What's up, dude? Nice to meet you.
So I want to bring up a moment in episode 1 of The Hustle, your show with Vice, which was incredibly impressive.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. I'm a huge fan of it. I'm definitely on the way of the Harlem season 2. Yeah. But with that, there was a moment in there where you were in the car. I'm sure you remember it. You were supposed to be in Allentown, Pennsylvania, with some broker or some person brokering a deal for you in real estate. You're big in real estate, and you dropped the ball.
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing was the guy was laying it out on you over the phone, and then you muscled back. And yeah, this is how I viewed it, man. You gotta understand, I come from middle class, right?
Yeah.
So you grew up in the hood.
Yeah.
And one thing I respect about folks that grow up in the hood is that they're not afraid to throw some punches. Okay? So I'm trying to learn how to do that myself, and a lot of folks listening to this just don't know how. No offense.
Yeah.
You came back at this broker. You were in the wrong. You had missed the meeting. There was a lot of money on the line, and you came back at him after he reamed you out, and you said, "Look, you don't need to sit here and hard talk me." And that conversation, I believe, ended up leading you to losing the deal. So it ended up, I think so. Let's talk on that for a moment.
Yeah.
How are you not afraid to be that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think in that, thank you for bringing that up, because it's an interesting part of the show where that, by the way, was completely unplanned.
Oh, I know.
We were shooting the pilot. Of course, I knew that there was a showing. I knew it. I'm not completely oblivious, but it's really weird because the way the TV happens is I knew that the TV we were going to shoot within a 2-week window, but TV is so spontaneous that it just kind of happened. It was all right, cool. We got the green light to shoot the pilot. That was the pilot actually. So that was shot some time ago.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it just kind of happened, and it was when you're on a TV crew, it's a 20-person crew, and so there's a lot of schedules that you're managing, and so it's actually hard to be flexible with it. So I was like, fuck it, let's roll with it. And I knew I was getting a bad deal from the lender.
So time out, run it back. I know what happened.
Yeah, so for context, I'm getting ready to buy this property, right? This is a 7-unit property in Pennsylvania, and my lender, I pretty much was dealing with a shark lender, and he was giving me terrible terms, really high interest rate, a lot of fees, and that just sounds like some business shit, but it's actually he's shark loan sharks prey on people. They set you up in a situation where it's easy to slip and fall, and then when you do, they take your property.
Right.
So I would have lost the capital that I put into the property. It's a very dangerous actually thing.
So you knew this? Yeah,
for sure. And I could just tell that they were sharkish. So anyway, comes the closing day. I know I'm supposed to be there closing, but in my heart, I'm trusting my heart. I'm like, dude, I don't want if I close, then all the deal terms are enacted. The moment you sign, it's official. If I don't sign, it's not official. It's just is what it is. So they show up to the closing table at the same time that we're shooting the show. And so anyway, this was not supposed to be part of the show. And I'm sitting there taking a call, and my director hears, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I was like, "Oh, this is just some personal shit." Because you can imagine this is very vulnerable moment,
real for you.
Personal.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't want this to be broadcasted nationally and now internationally. It's in Canada, Israel, France.
Yeah.
So I was like, no. And he was like, roll. And I was like, oh shit. And I got nervous, and then I was like, you know what? Fuck it, because this is the shit that I'm dealing with. And I don't want to do this show and pretend I'm 100% figured out. I want to show that I'm still figuring my shit out. And I want it to be part of the show. And how cool would it be if the guy who's helping other businesses grow also shares that he's going through shit?
Yeah.
And so it was a very uncomfortable moment for me, but we let it rock. And the way it played out was, in that particular call that you're referencing, the guy was like, "Hey, where the fuck were you? Blah, blah, blah." And then I realized in that moment, I was like, wait a second. It's my money. You're a fucking broker. You're gonna make money off of my money. You get paid your fees, the lawyer gets paid their fees, the attorney gets paid, everyone gets paid their fees, the seller walks away with a big chunk of my cash, the banker is gonna make his fees because he gave me a shitty deal, and at the end of the day, it's my bread that I'm putting up. So I just reclaimed my power as the buyer. the buyer makes everything go because you're the one who's got the bread. You're the one who's acquiring the asset.
Have you done that before?
No, that was my second deal.
Got it. I mean, reclaimed your power.
Oh no, I hadn't had to.
That's the part I want to focus on.
Yeah.
Because like respectfully, the real estate stuff's important, but I think what's relatable here is the fact that, and I encourage anyone listening to this, please like watch Vice's show with John. It's called The Hustle. It's called The Hustle, right?
Hustle, yeah.
Yeah, just Hustle. I figured I'd put that down there. But anyways, it's called.
I think folks, probably everyone has their own way of learning.
By the way, the only reason I use the word folks is because of you.
No way. That's hilarious. And the only reason I use that shit is because of Brandon.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Let me just make sure. I put this in my pocket, so can we make sure it's...
Can I yeah, no, you're good.
It's good.
Yeah, you're good, bro. Thanks for checking.
Yeah, no doubt. Folks.
Yeah.
No, but look, I think, man, I'm thinking of my mom because I'm so fucking opinionated that like, I used to be like, I can't believe like they don't want to do more. And my mom would be like, son, it takes every kind of person for the world to go around. And she like really drilled that line into me for years now. And it's got me to understand that it's like the way that I see fit isn't like what everyone should want. And that's fine. And so, but anyway, to put that into context, I almost felt like everyone should want to stretch and be a lot. And you know, that's just not the case. But then I go back and forth because then I say, man, is the reason that someone doesn't want to become all they want to be, is it because they don't feel like they can? And so, you know, I don't know. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe some folks are like very self-aware and they're like, dude, I just want to live in a ranch, you know, which is fine too. But anyway, to your question around
being custom, don't need as much advice as you think,
and not needing as much advice, for me, the reason I prefaced it with that is because I've learned a very specific way, and I have a feeling that a lot of people would also really learn great, and that's just like in the action of like doing, right? And it's like I learned way more about business just doing it. I've learned way more about podcasts. I'm not equipped to like thrive. I don't thrive in structured environments or like with precedents. I just don't like that. Like we got good at doing this because we do this a lot, you know? And like I just have a default to action where it's like, how can I do what I want to do on the smallest scale possible? Like, so with investing, it's the same thing. Like before we had big institutions investing in us, it was like, all right,
let's talk about this.
Yeah, I want to put 3 to 5K to work. Like, who else wants to do it? And I found a few homies that each wanted to put 3 to 5K, and we teamed up, and that's all it was. And like, it's, you know, so that's why I've been big on this lately. It's like treating the baby step with a ton of respect, because the baby step actually, it's like the acorn has the oak tree in it.
Right.
It's like the baby step has the end goal in the baby step.
Yeah.
It's in there. So if you want to be a fucking TV show host one day, then do this, like vlog. If you want to, you know, whatever it is you want to do on the grand scale, find the baby scale step of it and just start right there. And I don't know, that doing that, I've like nurtured my rapport with myself, my feedback loop within myself. And then a very interesting thing started happening is, you know, there are some folks in the current digital ecosystem that have built, you know, massive presences, and that creates a lot of fanaticism, right? And like, we're fans of these folks too. Like, we love consuming their content and stuff like that.
Right.
But then like, when you go, for me, when I went in person to observe some of this, and like, I see people just like fanboying to the nth degree as if that could never be them. And that was like the big disconnect. I'm like, for me, I draw inspiration from and say, yo, that's awesome that you could do it at that level. How could I do it better? How could I do this shit in my own way? Like, how could I take, you know, I'm trying to borrow from all these cats and like, you know, use it for my path. And like, the disconnect I have is from folks who are like, yo, that's all, like, I mean, it's great to, do you get the nuance here? It's like, it's awesome to be inspired by something or someone, but it's like, I'm fundamentally not someone who is just like, oh my God, like, if only I could. No, I'm disconnected from that completely. And so that's why I started leaning into the whole be custom thing. It's like, yo, you could be that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Beyond sense, man.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of a video you did back when, and you had mentioned some folks in that video. You said Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, and some other folks, and you're like, at some point we're gonna have to stop looking to the next generation.
Yeah.
Because these folks, like, be it as they may, they're legends and will always be.
Bro, you've consumed so much of my content. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because you're dropping stuff that's like, it's not even like on the 60-second Instagram clips.
No, man.
You're deep in, like, these aren't the singles. These are the album cuts.
Yeah, these are the album
You're
cuts, man.
fucking in there, dude.
I'm a fan, dude.
Fucking in there.
Respectful. But with that, you mentioned that these folks are legends, but be it as it may, at some point, your words exactly, we're gonna have to stop looking to the next generation and start looking to each other.
Facts.
And you said, quote unquote, I draw a lot more inspiration from
my peers
folks like this these days than I do from those. And you had mentioned it feels like a fundamental shift.
Yep.
Looking at that shift, because that was probably about a year ago, that felt like last summer to me.
Yep.
Give or take. How has that treated you thus far? Are you even more in that space?
Excellent, dude. I'm like leaning into my peers, and some of my peers give me a lot of heat. Like, I'm not here to control how anyone feels about me. Some people are like, fuck with me heavy. Some people don't fuck with me at all. And like, you can just kind of tell in the energy, and that's fine. But like, even if you don't fuck with me, I still want you to know that I'm rooting for your ass. Like, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
Like, I am a big believer in the fact that when I was a jazz player, I used to look at like Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Bird, and I used to read about how they all knew each other when they were coming up. And I used to be like, damn, is that coincidence?
Like it is now.
How is that? And then I started drawing relation. I'm like, oh shit. I didn't realize it until year after year after year. It's the same people, but the circles actually get smaller because the folks who stay consistent are fewer and fewer. It's like really hard to as you know, to stick around in this game is just hard. And so I just have nothing but tremendous respect when now I'm like 10 years in. It feels crazy to even say that. Not 8 years in. I'm 26. Cool. Started at 18, so I'm like 8-9 years in. But like some of the guys like Anthony Frazier, who you've been rocking with, have been rocking for a minute. Like, and man, I just have the greatest respect for that. And they know, like, if you ask Ant, like, and all these cats, like, man, they know I have love, man, and I try to support and I do my absolute best, and I'm really big on this, I'm not looking up, bro, I'm looking around.